I was so blown away that I heard God. I go to church, y'all, and I dropped to my knees and I really started to cry and travail. And I began to beg God at that time. I said, Lord, if you change my life, I won't give the enemy no more glory in my life. It doesn't matter how self-aware a person is. If you don't have the tools to produce something different, you're going to keep repeating same cycles and some of the same behaviors. I'm learning how to be a man. I'm learning how to be a father. I'm learning how to stand.
What's up, family? It's your main man, Coach Crump, with another great episode of the Boy Man King podcast. And I'm with my main man, Chizzy. Say what's up to the people,
What's
Chizzy.
going on, man? How you guys feeling? How you feeling? Happy Sunday to you, man. Happy Sunday to you guys. How's it going? How's it going?
Man, I'm super excited, man. And just in case I know some people are looking, do we have a celebrity artist? Do we have, you know what I mean, a gospel gangster? Do we have somebody who's been walking the red carpet? We have a little bit of all of that, but I want to formally introduce you to none other than the author, the speaker, the mental health advocate, the husband, the man of God himself. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the platform, none other than Vincent Casey Sr. Welcome to the platform, fam.
Welcome, King.
What it do? What it
What's
do?
happening?
What it
Yeah,
do?
man.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for
And
having me,
listen,
man. It is a blessing to be here.
and a quick congratulations. I saw a recent award, man, for you being one of the best speakers in the space, in
Wow.
the spiritual space,
Wow.
man. So shout out to you, man. Just
I
on
got
the
nominated.
nomination, man. How did that feel, man?
I got nominated by Black Christian Influencers as Motivational Speaker of the Year, and it's weird because I'm like, I wasn't planning on
Yeah,
this, and so when they say people are speaking your names in rooms that you ain't even been in yet, that's just a testimony of that, man. When God order your steps, He puts your name in the ears of those who need to
for
hear it.
sure. For sure.
Hey, listen,
For
man.
sure.
I want to help the audience and also help my main man Chizzy. You know, we're in a space. We big on personal growth,
Mhm.
personal development. But when I saw you in Made Men, like 12 weeks boot camp about growing as a man spiritually, because sometimes you see people on social media, but you don't really know what they're like outside of social media. And I got a chance to really see your heart. You didn't have to come on Made Men, but you made a choice to surrender and submit yourself to a process to grow yourself spiritually and hold yourself accountable. And when you're a grown man who quote unquote already got status and success, and you like, I'm gonna still surrender myself to whatever leadership and mentorship from other like-minded men, it says a lot about you. And so for me,
Amen.
and you know how they got that blue check? Man, that was that check for me to be like, oh, he a real one. He's somebody
Wow.
we can trust. He's somebody we can bring on the platform, and don't be about trying to create content to see how you could go viral, but see how you can create content to add value. And so, man, I
Come
want to
on.
thank you for you being who you are, bro, and stepping in the spot that you're in. So let the people know who is Vincent Casey Sr.
And I will say this humbly: I show up to change at least 2 Sundays out of the week, and I'm driving the golf cart, taking the people from their cars to the
Yes, sir.
to
Service.
the church
Come
because
on, man. Come on, fellas.
you got to
Yes,
serve,
sir.
and the Bible says humility comes before honor, and it just keeps me humble. It keeps me at a place where I never allow myself to be bigger than the program, and we know God is the program. But I am
Amen.
Vincent Anthony Casey Sr., aka Not Your Average Minister. You can find me on all platforms. I am a integrated attachment theory coach, certified in emotional mastery and belief reprogramming. I am a gym owner for over a decade, and I am an ordained minister who actually has been running a little bit from getting ordained as a pastor for probably about the past year. But God is pressing the issue right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So listen, man, we was talking behind the scenes. I know Chizzy is chomping at the bit at this conversation,
Sure.
but man, you help in a lot of ways, you know, serve in a lot of ways. But we really want to focus on helping men in their journey of healing. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And Chizzy, I know you want to kind of lead in that space, man. What you got for us as far as the first question you want to ask the expert of the
I
hour?
mean, there's so many comes to mind, man. This mental health space is huge right now. We would have to say it's a hot button issue. Even though we know
Very
as
true.
men, especially men that walk, in faith and walk in the spirit, we tend to really have to measure ourselves by our capacity to stay humble and our capacity to have a measurement for where we are spiritually, emotionally, and psychologically through God. Of course, there's conventional thoughts and conventional practices on the theory behind mental health and wellness, but I think it's a different level of understanding, a different level of spirituality, and a different experiential process that you have to go through once you determine that you're going to follow a pathway of righteousness and healing through righteousness. So I really want to just find out from you, as at what point, I mean, you grew up in the church. I'm assuming, so you're a junior. Does that mean that your dad kind of introduced you to spirituality, or your dad's a pastor as well? Like, what was it like growing up as a shorty, and how did you transition from, or if you transition at all, like how did you adopt this spirituality and this mental health space that's really not quite common amongst Black men in particular? We struggle in that space a lot. Like, how did you determine, all right, this is a space that I want to occupy, this is something that I want to kind of attach myself to for the purposes of helping the kingdom and helping men in particular? Tell us a little bit about your journey in that way.
I would say first, I didn't grow up in the church. I remember my aunt used to pick us up. I got five brothers and two sisters. It's eight of us. I'm the third oldest.
Hmm.
And I remember my aunt used to pick us up every now and then for church. But growing up in the projects, we was running the streets and doing the most. But I grew up in the streets. I was in the streets from the age of 12 until I was about 30. And when I turned 30, I ended up coming to Georgia and kicking it with my cousin, Life Jennings. People may know him as R&B singer.
Yeah.
And when I kicked it with him for 3 days, when it was time for me to go, he came to me. He said, "Cuz, what you think about going on the road with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." You know what I'm saying? And then I was like, "Hold on, wait a minute. I got a 1 year old and a 3 year old at home. I can't just leave them. Let me talk to their mom." And when I went and talked to her, she said, "Babe, go." She said, "This is a once in a lifetime thing." At this time, I was working at the strip club. I was selling dope. I was selling weed. I was living in the streets. I was doing that life. And so she was like, "If you go, you ain't got to be looking over your shoulder anymore." So I came to Georgia. He flew me back out, and I quit doing all of that cold turkey. Now, going on tour with him, I'm around celebrities. I'm at all the events and all these different things like that. And I got little people planting seeds here and there, but I'm not really focused on it because I'm living this rich life. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And I remember my cousin went to jail. He got in trouble like 2 years before I got here. He had to finally go do the time. When he did, he said I didn't have to leave. He said I could stay at his house. I'm like, granite floors, high ceilings. It's like a $2 million house. I'm staying. You know what I'm saying? I stayed for a little bit. My money started to get low. When my money started to get low, I'm like, I'm going back to Ohio. I got to get me a pack to get my money up. Went back to Ohio. I'm famous because people saw me on social media with all the celebrities on tour and stuff like that. And I was only back for like 2 months. When I went back, one of my friends hit me up and said, "V, I need you to ride with me. This guy broke my sister's jaw."
Mm.
And I'm like, "Oh man!" And my guy was a lunatic at the time. But if I hit him up, he's gonna ride with me. So I end up letting him come pick me up. He picked me up, and we go over to this lady house. He bangs on her door, and he said, "Ma'am, tell your son to come out here so I can talk to him." And she's like, "He ain't here." And he said, "Ma'am, I see his car on the street. Tell him to come out here so I can talk to him right now." He said, "Baby," she said, "Baby, I'm telling you, he ain't here." He said, "Ma'am, if you don't tell your son to come out here, we're gonna shoot your whole house up." And when he said that, him and the other two dudes was with us. They pulled out pistols, and I'm like, "What in the world is y'all?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Listen, let's get out of here. Let's go." For we end up doing something we ain't got no business doing, and so we end up leaving. We went across the street, and we laid in the grass for like about an hour. He gave me a pistol too, so we laid in the grass. The whole time I'm laying in the grass, I'm not saved or nothing, but I'm in
Mm.
this grass praying, like, "Lord, if you get me out of here, I'm going back to Georgia."
If
You know
you
what I'm
get me out of
saying?
this one, Lord, I
That's good.
promise I'll
Right.
Promise
forever.
I never fun.
Exactly. And so after about an hour, he was like, "Let's go." He dropped me off. When he dropped me off, I called Life's the woman that was taking care of his estate while he was locked up. I said, "When he call you from the joint, call me because I got to get out of here." And they called me like that Wednesday. This was a Sunday that this happened. That Wednesday he called me. I said, "Cuz, I got to come back to Georgia." I said, "If I don't, I'm end up dead or in jail or doing something I ain't got no business doing." He said, "Come back." When I came back,
Mm.
my brother was in Georgia for 2 years before me. And when I was on tour with Life, they wanted me to be a trainer because I'm in shape. I've been in shape for a long time. The reason why Life wanted me to go on tour with him was to do security and the training. And so they wanted me to work there, but I couldn't because we was always in and out of the city. And so when I came back, I called them and asked them, was the job opportunity still there? They said, yeah. And so I had to go to my brother's house to get my haircut. When I go over his house, this brother is shining. He's glowing. He's staying. We from the projects. He's staying in a house. He got a wife. His kids live with him. And I'm like, "Dude, what's up with you? What's going on?" He like, "V, man, God." I'm like, "God, what? What'd he say?" He said, I said, "How you know it was him? Was his voice deep?" And he's like, "Listen, V, I can sit up and tell you about God all day, but God calls on all of us. It's just up to us to make sure that he don't get the voicemail. And when he
Mm.
said that to me, that resonated with my spirit. So I didn't know what to do. I went home, I started listening to Kirk Franklin. I went home,
Yeah.
I started praying. I think that's what you do. You listen to gospel music, you feel me? I start praying, but it was just start reading the Bible, but it was just a visual exercise. I start praying, and after about after about a month of doing this, I start going through a whole lot of stuff at the same time, and to the point where life was ready for me to move out of his house because his girl was pregnant, and he mentally thinking a whole different type of way. So he ready for me to go. So I got to find that. I got kids in Ohio, and I got to send them money. When I first moved to Georgia, I got a DUI, but I got all of this stuff happening, and so I'm like, I'm going to church today, and God gonna tell me something today. And I remember I was working at LA Fitness and GNC at the same time, and I told my boss, I said, when I go to church today, God gonna tell me something. And she said, Vince, if you believe God is going to tell you something, you don't have to hear from God at church. You can go right to your room and pray.
Yeah.
And when I
Mm.
did that, I went up to my room and I prayed. And when I prayed, like God, the audible voice just spoke. And he showed me a picture. And in this picture, all of these faces popped up. And when these faces popped up, he said, you must release these people from your life. Some of the people was from here in Georgia. Some of the people was from back home in Ohio. Then it shifted scenes and it showed me sitting at a table by myself, leaning over a coffee table with the Bible open. And he said, focus on me. And then the third part, he showed me at the altar, like getting married. And so I was so blown away that I heard God. I go to church, y'all. And I go to church. And when I go to church, I set my Bible on the last pew and I walk past all the people. Mind you, this is on my first time in this church. I set my Bible down on the pew. I walk past all of the people. I dropped to my knees at the altar. And I sit at that altar and I cried for like 30 minutes. And then I kind of got coherent, like, they probably wonder who is this big muscle man up here crying. Let me get him and go to my seat. I got up and I went to turn to go to my seat, and the Holy Spirit snatched me back and said, I'm not done with you yet. And I dropped to my knees and I really started to cry and travail. And I began to beg God at that time. I said, Lord, if you change my life, I won't give the enemy no more glory in my life. And from that time, I quit smoking cold turkey. I became abstinent until I was married. I quit drinking. Like God began to shift me from that place.
Man.
Wow, wow, wow. Man, that's a dope testimony. So what I want to connect before we get into the work,
Mm.
what in that journey you get a total transformation. You kind of go cold turkey, but you start to do this journey with Christ, and we know how this thing could be. You could be on fire and you could be convicted, but you're still human.
Sure.
Yeah,
In that process of you kind of doing that, where does the health advocate come from? Where does particularly the men's mental health advocate? Because you've been doing the bodybuilding,
right,
right?
right,
You've
right.
been doing the security, you've been doing the streets, you've been
Yeah.
doing the hustling, and you did the spiritual thing. But where comes this space where all of a sudden you become this advocate for men's mental health?
I would
Where does
say
that
so.
journey come in?
I was saved from 2011 to now. And the church that I was going to, they closed down in the pandemic. And when they closed down in the pandemic, God allowed me to understand that He was isolating me in that place. And I went through a lot of hurt and betrayal and different things like that. And I was depressed for 2 years at this time. I'm talking about I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and on my way to work, I would pull over in a parking lot and I would call all my clients like, hey, I'm not feeling good. I'm not coming in today. And I would sit in that parking lot and I would cry for hours. And then I would go back home and I would take like 3 or 4 shots of vodka, and I would start back smoking weed. I was drinking and smoking cigarettes. And this was after being saved for 10 years. But I was so depressed and I was so hurt. Like these was my coping mechanisms. And I remember getting to a place where I realized that I was treating God how people had treated me, and He didn't do nothing to me. And so, in that point in time, I realized I also isolated myself so much that just like people hurt me, God could not send nobody to heal me. And funny enough is I was sitting at home and I was scrolling through social media, and Pastor Darius Daniels came through there. He said he gave a message that resonated with me. When he gave his message, it got me off the couch and into his church. And in getting into his church, I really didn't have a lot to say. I really didn't talk to nobody or anything like that. But at that same time, he also sent my wife, and we were dating at the time, and she's telling me, she's like, you got a mother wound, and when you deal with this and you deal with that. And I'm thinking like, you don't even know me. And God told me this was my wife as well. So not only did he send me to the church to get me off of the couch, but he also sent me somebody to show me a mirror that only shows my reflection. And so she's telling me these things about me, and I'm thinking to myself, like, it's embarrassing, it's shameful, it's guilt, and I feel the guilt of what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing, and her having to tell me some of these things. But if God sent me her and he told me this is my wife, then what's the worst? And she was like, I think you need to go to therapy. And I'm like, I'm not going to therapy. I don't need no therapy. And I went to therapy. And when I went to therapy for the first time, I realized this. It doesn't matter how self-aware a person is. I'm extremely self-aware. I know me, flaws, faults, and shortcomings, strengths, and all. It doesn't matter how self-aware a person is. If you don't have the tools to produce something different, you're going to keep repeating same cycles and some of the same behaviors. And so when I began to implement that and change myself, it was like a light bulb moment. Like, I know too many brothers that's bound that won't even put themselves in a position of talking to brothers that is healthy brotherhood, or even talk to a therapist or somebody that's educated in this space to give them a better understanding of themselves. And so it was almost like I hit a gold mine, and I just wanted everybody to know. So that's what led me to this men's mental health
I love it.
advocate
Yeah,
space.
I love it.
it's important to highlight the depression and the isolation part, because there are people that are watching who potentially will watch, who've seen your story, have heard your story. Of course, we like to glamorize where we are now, but there is a definite transition between where we were and how we get to where we are now. And I think it's important to be able
Yeah.
to convey that to viewers, to men in particular, because there's somebody sitting at home today that's feeling isolated, that's feeling depressed, and doesn't have this spiritual awareness and even the self-awareness to recognize what it is that they need to move from that depressive state and that isolation state.
Yeah.
What are the recommendations for the brother who's sitting at home? He's feeling depressed, he's feeling isolated, he's feeling like he has nothing to pull from. Like, how does one tap into their inner self, or tap into something that allows them to see past their immediate circumstances and create a different environment, a different scope for the trajectory of their lives? Like, what do you recommend in this mental health space for man to pull a guy from out the house, isolated, depressive state, thinking about suicide? Because statistically, we are at a higher rate of suicide across the board. How does one go from where they are now to where they need to go in a healthy way? Just speak to that for me.
I would say this, because this is what helped me, is, as I said earlier, God sent me to change. And when I first went to change, I was very standoffish. I didn't talk to people because in the church that I went through, that I went to, by the grace of God, I was probably I'm in shape. I dress
Yeah.
nice, you know what I'm saying? And so a lot of guys would come in and I would deal with jealousy, envy, betrayal. They would whisper behind my back. So I just did not trust guys. And when God sent me to change, what I realized that is that there are healthy brothers out here. And not only are there healthy brothers out here, they want to see you win. There's no big eyes and little U's. And so what I was doing was I was putting my experience of betrayal, of hurt and pain on everybody. And so I closed myself off to other people. And so I would say to that person that's watching is, you got somebody who you trust. You got somebody who's been there. You got somebody who will check up on you even when you don't have the words to say to them. Talk to them. Get yourself in some type of community of brothers. Get yourself somewhere where somebody else can help you carry this thing, so you're not doing it by yourself. That was one of the greatest things that God gave me, was the brotherhood and change. And the reason why I say that's the greatest thing, because, and it's crazy, because the first, what God told me to do, he had me go serve. I had been the armor bearer. I didn't really have to do nothing other than watch the pastor. So when I finally came to change, God said, I need you to serve. Get on the parking lot team. And by getting on the parking lot team and serving, what did it do? I started talking to people. Hey, how you doing? How's your day going? It started to open me back up. And then the brothers is like, hey, bro, how you doing, man? What's
Yeah.
your name? And we started to glean from each other. And I say that because you cannot do this by
Right.
yourself. God says, do not fail to assemble yourselves with the rest of the saints.
Mhm.
And so you need a healthy brother, or even if you got a sister, you need somebody to help you carry this thing when you don't have the strength to carry it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. Like, I think two principles to take away, because you talked about, particularly having that wife, having that mirror. And boy, can we relate to having that mirror in your face when you're like, you know what I mean? And I say everybody, we talk about awareness, but you're never fully aware, to your point. We all have sore spots, blind spots, and dark spots. And people around you can really only see that. Now, to release it, to your point too, Chizzy, you reached out when it was like, hey, I'm gonna talk to a brother, because when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. You reached out to a friend, you reached out to a male mentor that you trusted with. For me and Vincent, they had the wives kind of make you release something, say
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
But I also had in a season in my life when I was also struggling, where I released to my mom. Well, like, so it's important to get that person, whoever that person, like to your point, Vincent, it could be male or female. But what we don't want brothers to do is the other part. That's the difference, is the releasing is you getting the weight off. But the
Right.
pivot is doing something differently to have you not stay in that cycle.
mhm,
And so it's like we want to make sure we get the release, but also want to make sure we do the pivot. So get the release, but you join the parking lot ministry. Chizzy, you join Prayer Warriors Global, the prayer line ministry. You know what I mean? Like, I got counseling. Vincent, you got counseling. Like you simply can't just release and then go into your social cycle again, your social condition again, as it was before. Like, you have to release and
Absolutely.
be like, I got that. Now let me pivot. Let me make sure I'm moving away so that I can get a different outcome and I can learn. What you said was so powerful, Vincent. No matter how much ahas, no matter how much releasing you do, whether you cry on the altar or you speak to a safe space, if you don't have the tools and then you don't know how to use those tools, you will still find yourself trapped in the same spaces, fighting the same demons and having the
Come
same
on.
outcomes. So yeah, man, I just wanted to add that contextual piece because that's very important.
yeah.
That's good,
And
coach.
I also think that, allowing for grace in this space as well, because, we don't want to give the impression that you wake up one day and you have this aha moment and all the resources and supports are just there at your disposal and you're able to just utilize them as best as you can. You know what I mean? All of us have had moments where we've had to give ourselves grace, and the people around us have to give us grace because, as we know, in an organic process, in a spiritual process, especially when you start to climb that spiritual ladder, and God starts to, tap into those things and you identify your purpose, the enemy also has ways of attacking that purpose and ways of continually throwing those arrows in your direction. Let's talk a little bit about that grace that's needed for ourselves, and having the right associations of people who understand and can empathize with the real struggles of being a God-fearing man, and being a man who's taken a different path to get a different result. Because, as we know, the attacks become a lot greater when you're fighting for the kingdom, when you're walking in purpose, when you're living in your
Absolutely.
purpose, and the carnal mind may not understand this component, because all of us struggle with mental health, but once you make a determination in your heart that you're going to walk the righteous path, I believe there's a different level of attack that comes with that. You know what I mean? Let's talk a little bit about that grace period. How do you navigate, the organic process that it takes to go through the challenges, to have this aha moments, to recognize your blind spots? Vincent, I want you to talk about a little bit about that, because we see you as this refined man of God now. What did grace look like for you during your time, during your hard times?
I would say the crazy thing is I'm 45 years old. I felt not good enough probably until about 2, 3 years ago.
Mm,
And one of the greatest revelations that taught me to be patient with myself and to give myself grace was Pastor Darius preached a message. And he said, he was giving all of these reasons why. It might have been a made man. I think it was a made man. And he was talking about all of these reasons that cause us to be insufficient as man. And the one that stuck out to me was underexposure to healthy examples. Coach, you may remember
sure.
that. And
Yeah.
so he was talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
underexposure to healthy examples. And I realized out of everything he said, I grew up in the projects. I never seen a man lead in the family. I never seen a man manage his finances. I never seen a man lean into his woman when she's emotional. I never seen a man lean into his emotions when outside of anger. If he was insecure, it came out of anger. If he felt not good enough, it came out of anger. That's I was underexposed to healthy examples. And what I had, the grace I had to give myself, and I learned to give myself, is I always use this example even when I'm mediating with men. Is when you go to a job, and if you work at McDonald's, when you go to McDonald's and you working there for that first week, you make burger fries. The whole first 2 weeks you working there, are you gonna get fired? Absolutely not, because you're in training. You have a grace period in order to burn the fries and not get fired. That's the same thing. I'm learning how to be a man. I'm learning how to be a father. I'm learning how to stand. I'm learning how to lead. I'm learning how to be a better steward. So I had to learn to give myself grace and not fire myself for where I got it wrong, because the old Vincent would have made the mistake the sum of who I am. Dang, I got that wrong. I must be a bad
Yeah.
person. Dang, I didn't do that right. That must be who I am. That must be something that I'm always going to struggle with. So I realized that, because I realized that the lessons are not life sentences, that I actually learned from the mistakes or the bad decisions. And because I learned from the mistakes or the bad decisions, that lets me know, one, that I've changed, but two, I have to give myself grace to unlearn the old thing while I relearn the new thing.
Come
And in
on.
that process, there's going to be, when you first started, it's going to be 90% of you doing the old thing and 10% of the new
Yeah.
thing. Then it's going to be 50% of the old thing, 50% of the new thing. Then it's going to be 75% of the new thing, 25 before you really change. Like, I learned to give myself grace as I'm learning to do the new thing while I'm unlearning the old thing.
Yeah, that's good. You gotta learn to deprogram before you reprogram, right?
Come on,
And
talk
then
about it,
and then
coach.
and you don't we never arrive, we always evolve. And I've learned that it's not only about giving my grace for the journey or what I was dealing with, like give my grace for today. I need grace right now. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm still struggling. So let's be crystal clear. Like, when you fighting the fight of faith, you fighting against the flesh. And so the flesh ain't going nowhere. I always refer to the movie Doctor Strange. When you get all this information, you get all this access, you got all this ability, you got all this talent, you got all this team. Now that I have all this, what about my demons? And the ancient
Right.
one says,
Come on, coach.
the ancient one says, but she says a bar that I love to share with men. She says, you never lose your demons. You learn to rise above them. Come on, man.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Can
So we
I
be thinking,
if
Tizzy, if I start a podcast and I pay tithes and I get married and I has a baby and I do a good job and go home, that everything's gonna be, I ain't gonna have no more problems. The
Crazy.
devil is a lie. You still
yeah,
wrapped in that flesh, and you have to
yeah.
look that situation internally in the face and be like, I'm choosing to be better. I literally have, fights with my flesh where I'm like, I'm choosing to be better today, bro. Like, what I'm saying? I'm not choosing that. You know what I mean? And we got to be honest with men, because they be like, man, because we always, especially from the black culture perspective, you looking for a come up. So what happens is, even as a man, you still got this hustler vibe. Like, once I get this, once I
Come on.
get that, I got a lick, I'm on a come up. And in your mind, you're going to arrive, and you're not realizing, bro, it's just more responsibility. It's just more accountability.
Yeah.
It's just a bigger weight. You just getting better, but the demons are going nowhere. They're in this world, and you are in that flesh. You
You
have
just
to have a
rising above them.
plan to address that situation daily. So you got to give yourself grace. I want to finish with this. You got to give yourself grace, but you also got to be truthful. You
Yeah.
got to be truthful with your heart, and you got to be truthful with your humanity. And the outcomes and the behavior, it is what it is. And also the things that's out of your control, it is what it is. So choose wisely. And I think it's important that as we navigate grace, give yourself grace, because to your point, Vincent, we're not going to get it perfect. We're not going to shoot the right shot. We're not going to throw the right pitch. We're not going to say the right words. We're not going to do the right deed every single time. But you don't sit and wallow in it, but you do learn from it. You do acknowledge that you did make a mistake, that there was a wrong turn, that that's not the right move, that you did hurt somebody, that you do have to reconcile, that you do have to mediate, that you do have to pivot. But it also means that you don't say, well, blame somebody else is the reason why I'm here. You can't give yourself grace to where you start to make yourself excuses, but you
You
do
can't
want to
make
grace
grace
yourself
wash
when you
rag.
don't make yourself, blaming yourself that you can never get out of this, because both of those things are false, right? So yeah, I just want to kind of give complete context to grace, with truth.
Real quick.
Grace is not a wash rag. Can I, if it's okay, I want to share this quick testimony. It's like 60
For
seconds,
sure.
and it's for
We ain't
somebody.
pressure like
It's
that for
for
time.
somebody. What you say,
I said we ain't
Chizzy?
pressure like that for time because I was gonna ask you what's your 3 non-negotiables to help keep grounded. So I'm gonna let you end with your 60-second and give me 3 non-negotiables to help you stay grounded in this day 2026.
Okay. Okay. So the testimony that I want to give, then this is for somebody, because otherwise, why would God drop it on my heart? And this is for somebody that's still struggling with therapy because they self-aware and they know themselves and such and such. I struggle with masturbation. Very, very transparent, testimony, or very vulnerable testimony. I struggled with masturbation from the time I was 13 until I was like 41. I'm 45. Do you hear what I'm saying? And when I went to therapy and I'm talking to the Christian therapist, and I'm like, man, but I know it's sin, and I don't want God to be looking at me like this and looking at me like that. And he said, Vince, let's take the sin aspect out of it. And I said, okay. He said, what is the thoughts that you having before you go masturbate? And I'm thinking like, I never thought, what's the thoughts I be having? And I'm like, usually I just got into an argument or a disagreement. Usually I was feeling not good enough
Yep,
or feeling bad
yep,
or feeling inadequate.
yep.
As soon as I start feeling that, then the enemy is whispering those thoughts like, go masturbate. And then the therapist said, aha. He said, for you, it's not about sin. It's not about pornography. It's not even about the masturbation. He said, for you, when you are feeling not good enough or you feeling these negative emotions, it is producing these negative hormones. And so you are looking for something to counteract those negative hormones. And so you go masturbate because that's a quick release of oxytocin. That's a quick release of serotonin. And I'm like, boom. Like I didn't think about it like that. And so the crazy thing is all I had to do in that was to find something else to release that serotonin and that oxytocin, which for me, turning on some worship music, for me, calling one of my brothers or going to the gym or something. And I say that because I would have been beating myself up for the sin if I did not talk to the therapist and
Yeah,
allow him to give me
yeah.
a different perspective from an educational space of where it was coming from. And so I wanted to share that because I believe that that's for somebody, and where they may be struggling with going to talk to somebody.
Right.
My three
That's good, bro.
non-negotiables.
To keep you grounded, just to keep you grounded as a man that that elevates himself. Like, what's the 3 non-negotiables that you have for your daily routine that keep you grounded in your faith, whatever it is?
My three non-negotiables that keep me grounded is the first thing, because I'm a man first, and God dealt with me in this, is to not never to try to be the man, the father, or the husband that my wife, my children, or anybody wants me to be, but always be the man, the father, and the husband that God calls me to be. And so that means that I can't do fatherhood, I can't do marriage, and I can't do manhood according to anybody's perspective but what God
Sure.
says. And so because people will have us fathering according to their wounds or being a husband according to their
Yep.
triggers. They'll have us coddling them in ways that won't provoke them to heal. But when I be all that God called me to be, maybe he will allow me to trigger you so you can heal in that area.
Mhm.
Maybe he is allowing me to show you that mirror. So that's one of my things, is always take it back to God and be the husband, the father, and the man that he called me to be, and not what people want me to be. The second thing for me is I gotta work out. I gotta work out. When I work out, as far as taking care of my body, then my meals is in order. My prayer life is in order. Like all of these things fall in order. So when I lack that discipline, discipline falls in every area. You know what I'm saying? And then the second thing is, Pastor Philip Mitchell said this. He said, my prayer life is ferocious. If I don't do nothing else, if I ain't got time for nothing else, I'm going to pray. I'm going to speak with the Lord, and I'm going to wait to hear what he says. And so being the man that he's called me to be, always making sure that I'm taking care of my temple, because there are a lot of other components that are connected to it, and keeping my prayer life where it needs to be. So that way it is a clear communication between me and the Father.
Yes, sir. Appreciate
I
that.
love it,
Love it.
man. Chizzy, what's your takeaway from this, man?
Man, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. That mental health space is a space that I love, and that I appreciate as well. The takeaway for me is consistency with a side dose of grace, man, because we're gonna fall short, and you have to really be you have to be an advocate for yourself in that space, because you, and only you can determine through God, obviously, what you need and how you're going to show up in different spaces. But just learn to be easy on yourself, so to speak, to allow for the transition, to allow for the growth. Because if you get caught up in this grandiose outcome that you're looking for, that can really deter you from the whole entire process. Just think
Wow.
about The Alchemist. I don't know if you guys have read the book The Alchemist. It's just staying present in the now and being able to just appreciate the gifts that you have now. So that's my takeaway.
Man, you got a lot going on, bro. But how can the people? What's the latest you got going on, and how can people find and follow you to know more about what you do have going on in your world?
They can find me on any social media platform at Not Your Average Minister. And the latest thing that I got going on is I just launched a journal probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, called Battered, Bruised, Broken, but Still Chosen. And this is a 30-day journal. I believe that 30 days is a habit, 60 days is discipline, 90 days is a
Yeah,
lifestyle. So I created the journal to get people that first habit, to get them into a habit of understanding that just because you've been betrayed, just because you've been hurt, just because life has wounded you, just because mom and daddy rejected you and abandoned you, yes, you've been battered, bruised, and broken, but the call is still the call after the fall. You are still chosen. You are not useless to the kingdom. And so,
yeah.
battered, bruised, broken, but still chosen. You can find it on Amazon, on any one of my platforms. And I'll leave with this last nugget, Chizzy, as you said. One of the hardest things I've learned for men, if I could leave them with this piece, is a lot of times we be hard on ourselves because mama was hard on us, daddy was hard on us,
Yeah,
society has been hard on us, everybody
sure.
has been hard on us. And so there's a place that we don't give ourselves grace because nobody else gave us
Yeah,
grace. But you don't have to be subject to treating yourself how everybody else treated you. Like, you are human too. You got feelings too. You matter too. And the Bible says to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And AS means to the same degree or to the same extent. So I cannot pour into Chizzy or pour into Coach Crump if I haven't first poured into Vincent. I
yeah.
cannot sacrifice comfort, love, encourage anybody until I first do that for Vincent. Because if Vincent falls down, then guess what? My family and my children fall down too. So, brothers, you got to know that you got to pour into your cup. The Bible says he fills our cup until it run over. The run over is for your wife and your children and everybody else, but it being full is for you.
Man, thank you, bro. Mic drop. That
Yes,
what they
sir.
call, that what they call a mic drop. Vincent, man. Listen, on behalf of the Boy Man King, our community, man, thank you so much for taking out the time to bless us with your wisdom and with your wise counsel, bro. We really appreciate you. And we say this as we always say, man, not just for you and your journey, but for all men. We say the journey continues. And the Boy Man King
Yes.
pod, bro. We out. Y'all be blessed, man. Thank you.